Where's the child, madam?
Where is the child, please?
Daddy there.
Look at me.
Constance.
Yeah,
Constance, Arabella, whoever you are.
Right, where's your child? Have we searched it?
For weeks, they moved in silence, hidden in plain sight. A newborn vanished, and the nation held its breath. This is the tragic and unsettling case of Constance Marten and Mark Gordon, a couple whose disappearance sparked a massive search across England in early 2023. At the heart of the story, a missing baby, a couple on the run, and a community's desperate hope for a miracle that never came. Constance Marten was born in 1987 into an aristocratic family steeped in history, tradition and influence. Her early years were spent in Dorset, a county in southwest England known for its idyllic countryside, ancient coastline and slow, stately pace of life. Dorset is a place where rolling green hills give way to chalk cliffs, market towns and coastal villages frozen in time. It's not the kind of place you'd expect a tragedy to begin, but it's where Constance's story starts, in privilege and peace. Her family estate was nestled among Dorset's rural landscapes, far removed from urban noise or hardship. Her father, Napier Marten, was a former page to Queen Elizabeth II, who later became a filmmaker and environmentalist. Her mother, Virginie de Sellers, came from a wealthy French banking lineage. Their lifestyle was one of tradition, discretion and expectations, a world defined by class and legacy. Growing up, Constance enjoyed many of the pursuits typical of upper-class British youth: horse riding, exploring the grounds of her family's land, attending formal gatherings, taking an early interest in the arts. Dorset offered a kind of freedom, safe, unhurried, and full of natural beauty. It's a kind of place where children are raised to inherit land, titles, or expectations. But for Constance, those expectations began to feel confining. She was educated at St Mary's, a prestigious boarding school in Wiltshire, where structure and academic excellence were central. The school was known for its discipline and social polish, producing figures in politics, science, and the arts. Classmates described her as introspective, intelligent, and creatively inclined, but also someone who didn't quite fit the aristocratic mould. She preferred literature and drama to the rigid traditions she was surrounded by. That passion led her to study drama at the University of Leeds, far from the protective walls of her upbringing. At Leeds, she stepped into a freer world, one shaped by self-expression, student theatre and independence. She later appeared briefly in glossy magazines like Tatler, a nod to her family name and status. But there were signs she was drifting. As the years passed, Constance became increasingly private. By her late 20s, Constance began to disappear, first emotionally and then physically. She distanced herself from her family, friends, and her former life. She abandoned her apartment, her bank accounts, her stage career, and vanished into the background. And it was then, at her most vulnerable, that she met Mark Gordon, an experience that will shape history forever. Mark Gordon's life story is one marked by hardship, mistakes, and the long shadows they cast. Born in Birmingham, England, his early years remained largely private, but his journey took a difficult turn after he moved to the United States as a young boy. Raised in Florida, Mark's adolescence was troubled. At just age 14, he was convicted of seriously assaulting a neighbour. The nature of the offence was grave and had profound consequences for both him and others. Sentenced to 20 years in a Florida state prison, Mark spent his formative years behind bars, a period that shaped much of his later life. This long incarceration meant that his transition back to society was particularly challenging. Upon his release, Mark was deported to the UK, a country where he had limited family support and few resources to help him rebuild his life. Returning to a place that was largely unfamiliar, he faced the daunting task of navigating a society where his past would always be a barrier. Employment opportunities were scarce and social stigma compounded his difficulties. In the years following his return, Mark lived a transient lifestyle. He moved frequently, often without stable housing or steady work. His distrust of authorities and social services made it difficult for him to engage with systems designed to assist vulnerable individuals. Instead, he maintained a low profile, avoiding attention as much as possible. Despite the challenges, Mark sought connection. In 2016, he met Constance Marten, a woman from a very different background. Their relationship was unconventional and raised concerns among those who knew Constance. Together, they began a life largely separated from mainstream society, living intermittently in short-term rentals and at times outdoors. This begs the question, why would Constance, an heiress of privilege, fall into step with a man like Mark? The answer remains unclear. Was it love, rebellion, manipulation, or did she simply want to disappear, allowing Mark to show her the way? Whatever the reason, their connection was powerful and devastating. Before the tragic events of 2023 that brought national attention, Constance Marten and Mark Gordon had 4 children together, all of whom were removed from their care by social services. These removals took place over a span of several years and were not widely publicised at the time. However, details later emerged during court proceedings and media investigations that shed some light on the pattern of family involvement with the authorities. Their mistrust of government institutions, including health and social services, meant that the children often missed standard health checkups and developmental monitoring. Concerns were raised by local authorities over the safety and welfare of the children, particularly around living conditions and lack of access to medical care. In each instance, Child Protection Services intervened, ultimately deciding that it was in the children's best interests to be placed into care. Authorities had long-standing concerns about the couple's ability to provide a stable and safe environment. Despite opportunities to engage with the support services, the couple often remained elusive and at times appeared to intentionally avoid contact with professionals. From 2016 onwards, the couple vanished from normal life. They moved between temporary rentals and isolated corners of the UK, never staying long in one place. By 2022, they were off the grid entirely, living without permanent shelter, income, or identity. Constance became pregnant in secret. No doctors, no hospitals, no record. And as police began to search for the missing couple, they uncovered a story that would grip the nation in horror, a tale of privilege, isolation, and a newborn lost in the shadows. The events of early 2023 involving Constance Marten and Mark Gordon began with a fire, an ordinary emergency call that would ignite a nationwide manhunt. On January 5th, police and fire crews were dispatched to the side of the M61 motorway near Farnworth, Bolton, where a car was engulfed in flames. It was quickly established that the vehicle was registered to Constance Marten. But it wasn't just the blaze that raised alarms. Inside the burnt wreckage were several of the couple's belongings, alongside signs of a recent birth, including a placenta. There was no sign of Constance, her partner Mark Gordon, or the newborn baby. What began as a roadside incident was now a high-risk missing persons case. Authorities were immediately concerned. Constance has recently given birth, likely in secret and without medical assistance. Her and Mark's history with Child Protective Services only deepened the urgency. The absence of the baby from the vehicle, combined with the couple's disappearance, prompted a nationwide alert. Within 24 hours, sightings began to emerge. CCTV captured the pair in various locations across the country. First in Liverpool, then Harwich in Essex, followed by multiple locations across London. They travelled using taxis paid for in cash and never stayed long in one place. One particularly haunting image from CCTV showed the couple with a large blue pram, but what struck investigators and the public alike was what was missing. There was no sign of the child. It quickly became apparent that the couple were trying to evade the police. They had ditched their phones, avoided hospitals, and left behind all traces of a digital or institutional footprint. As the days passed, police increased the intensity of their appeals. Public statements were made not to criminalise the couple, but to urge them to come forward and confirm that the baby was safe. Detectives made it clear that the focus was on the child's well-being, but the couple did not respond. As January gave way to February, the search widened. New footage placed them in East Sussex, specifically near the ferry port in New Haven. Fears grew that they might try to flee the country, so border agencies were notified and alerts were issued across Europe. But further investigations revealed no border crossings or ferry tickets. The conclusion was chilling. They were still somewhere in the UK hiding in plain sight. By mid-February, the search had zeroed in on Brighton. Residents in Hollingbury area had reported sightings of a couple matching their description. There were signs that they may have been sleeping rough, camping in wooded areas and avoiding contact with others. This led to one of the most intensive local searches in recent history. Drones scanned the skies, dogs searched the brush. Hundreds of officers combed through woodland, desperate to find any trace of the missing child. Then, on February 27th, after 53 days of evading authorities, Constance Marten and Mark Gordon were located and arrested near Hollingbury Golf Course.
Wherever you are.
Right, where's your child? Have we searched it?
Sooner you tell
Yeah,
us.
this isn't at the front, is it? I've just asked, I'm going to undo it now. I've just...
I'll level with you. You're under arrest for child neglect.
Where is your child?
Constance, at the moment you're under arrest for child.
Dishevelled and exhausted, they had been living in a makeshift tent during one of the coldest winters in recent memory. But even after their arrest, the most pressing question remained unanswered. Where was the baby? The couple refused to answer, being evasive. Mark Gordon seemed to be more interested in what food the officers had to offer.
Child, my friend. Where's the child?
My food, please.
In a minute, where's your child?
Yes, I'm Christian.
Where's your child?
Food?
In a minute, where's your child? Where's your child?
My food, please.
While Constance simply acted ignorant and made confused mumblings.
Oh, look at the photo on there.
Oh, where's the child, madam?
Where is the child, please?
Daddy bear.
Look at me.
Constance.
Constance, Arabella, whoever you are.
Right, where's your child? Have we searched it?
Immediately after the couple's arrest, a desperate search began for the missing child. Police combed over 90 square miles of land, working against time and weather. Officers were seen searching gardens, sheds and open fields. Cadavered dogs were brought in. On March 1st, 2023, the worst fears were confirmed. The body of a deceased baby was found in a plastic bag in a locked shed, just meters away from where the couple had been camping. The cause of the death was initially undetermined, but the condition of the remains suggested that the baby had died weeks earlier. Authorities named the infant Victoria. She had never received medical care, and it was unclear whether she had died due to exposure, malnourishment, or something else entirely. What was certain is that she was hidden, abandoned, and never properly cared for. Public reaction was one of horror and disbelief. The case dominated headlines not just for its tragedy, but for the bizarre and deeply unsettling way it unfolded. Constance Marten and Mark Gordon were both charged with gross negligence manslaughter, concealment of the birth of a child, and perverting the course of justice. In court, the couple appeared solemn and largely unresponsive. The prosecution outlined their deliberate attempts to evade authorities, including using burner phones, paying in cash, and hiding their movements. As of the latest proceedings, the public awaits justice for baby Victoria. The tragedy sparked public and governmental reflection on how vulnerable individuals, particularly newborns, can slip through the cracks of society. There were calls for improved mental health services, especially for women at risk of postnatal crisis, and better monitoring of individuals known to be living without stable housing. Many also questioned how a couple with such obvious warning signs could go unnoticed for so long. Martin's background and Gordon's criminal history added to the media narrative, but ultimately the story is one of failure to protect a life that had just begun. At the centre of this case is a child who never got to live her life. Victoria was born into secrecy. She had no voice, no visibility, and no chance. We are left asking how many more slipped through the cracks. This is not just a story of crime, it's a story of silence and the high cost of turning away from those on the margins. Thank you for watching The Happenings. If this case moved you, consider subscribing and sharing your thoughts below. Every voice helps raise awareness for those who cannot speak for themselves.